Ow! DLV delicious people. Howdy everyone. I'm here to talk about the first episodes, the first 4 episodes of the show Society. Evidently there was only 10 episodes of this show, so eventually I will go into maybe watching the rest of those, telling you how I felt about the show at some point. Really, when talking about this show on Netflix, currently to the second it's recording, this show reminded me of the Stephen King movie Langoliers, where ultimately you'd have people that fly off and then eventually land their plane onto a seemingly Earth that is inhabited. But then eventually there is some monster-ish like demons that want to go out of their way to attack people on this plane. Really, it's been a while since I've seen the Langoliers, and I think they did eventually. I think they remade that one, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I first going into this movie, that's what it kind of reminded me of. Like, it also reminded me of the show The Island, and it also reminded me of the CW show The 100, with the exclusion of eventually escalation, where everybody seemingly eventually comes back to this establishment, to this place. When looking at it, there's probably a number of things that could be like people who eventually get secluded onto one island of sorts, or just get secluded in one environment to where there is no way for them to dare in fact go back to their real true society, as if like a very much Bermuda Triangle of sorts that just appears out of seemingly we don't know where, we don't know why, or we don't know where. So going into this show, weirdly and bizarrely, I had just seen Catherine Newton in the show Freaky, or in the movie Freaky. And reason why I started watching this show, I'm like, oh yeah, she's like actually in this show too. Oh wow, what a coincidence. Plus, then my mom had to, while we were watching the show, because I watch stuff with my mom. So what? It happens. Uh, Ultimately, I normally have been watching a lot of Christmas movies, but we watched this tonight, so I was like, I guess I'll talk about it. Recently, I watched 4 episodes of it, so why not just talk about it? So ultimately, realizing that Catherine Newton was also on Supernatural, was like, God, what was she on in Supernatural? And then I was like, oh yeah, she's Cass's daughter. And I was like, oh yeah, like so. Yeah, she was on Supernatural too, and I like that didn't pop in there until just tonight when my mom was asking me like, wasn't she on Supernatural? I'm like, yeah, I guess she was. I didn't even mention that in the Freaky review. So going into this show, I thought it was kind of a bizarrish like show. Like to me, I was like, what is it going to be like? Lost? Is it going to be? God, I should have said that too. Is it going to be Lost, where every? But again, that's kind of like a plane crashing, and then people are on some jungle island, and weird stuff is all going on. There's a little bizarrish like tick thing that is counting down to some weird time thing that people are just like, oh, what's going to be when the thing counts down? What's going to happen? Nothing. So when going into this show, there isn't a huge amount of like, oh my god, like things are coming out of nowhere, everyone's getting like, there's so much suspense in this show. No, recently in this show, it's kind of much more slowed down a little bit. Hence why, like, the only complaint that I probably had in this show was like, man, this show is like really slow moving. Like, the only problems, of course, that are coming on within the show is just kind of like teen angst and like so concerned about a society that no longer has doctors, or no longer has doctors, no longer has the safety net, so to speak. If somebody doesn't know anything, they eventually have to figure out how to learn it. And yeah, I thought that this movie was, or I thought that this show was like slow, but I thought it was interesting. I don't think that there's anything wrong with this show. I think it's only 10 episodes too, with one season to it. So it's not like you have to like, oh my god, I have to watch like I have to watch 8 seasons of this show to figure out what the hook is. Maybe at the very tail end of this season, we'll figure out what the hook is. But knowing Netflix series and know how scarcity that they usually go into like 2 seasons of a show, or they like dust out like a big huge like it would have to be something that would actually really pull out a really big name, and I don't know if society is going to actually do that. But who knows? So like pull out like I don't know if this show is going to have enough traction to it to where people are, because Netflix just kind of throws anything out there and slaps their name on it. So who knows if society's gonna get a second season, or if they conclude what is all going on towards the very last season, or very last episode. I mean, within this first season. I honestly just hope that it's always like consistently to where it's not, oh, okay, now we're gonna, the second season is gonna be on the adult side, and I bet that's what it's gonna be. So I'm like, oh yeah, now we're gonna do a whole entire season about the adults and how their kids left and how they can't find them now, and that's gonna be that whole season. And then the third season is gonna go right back to the kids and be the exact same point of where we left off in the first season. It'll probably end up going like that. That's usually how these shows tend to go if they go into multiple seasons. But so, anyways, here is the story of this show. I'm going to tee this one up for some people. So, we have it to where this town is really smelly, as if somebody like farted really bad. Like a lot of people are putting like handkerchiefs and like they're putting just like stuff in front of their face because somebody farted really bad, or this town just is so smelly. It's the smelliest town that you've ever smelled. Ultimately, we also have some kind of scripture that is on some wall somewhere in the part of the town where ultimately people have to really point that out to people. And the scripture, they ultimately have to like say what the words all mean. So if anything, this town is just so effing smelly because everybody farts in it that reasonably they have to take all of the childrens, they have to have all of the children all go onto these buses and be shipped out. The only problem is once these kids get shipped out, it seems that these buses have nowhere to go. So where in turn these buses drop them right back off where they were picked up, and then all of a sudden you just end up having an environment where absolutely no adulthood or adult like people are in this society or in this world, or in this bottled necked like environment, which to me, honestly, so I'm like, oh, so we're Lord of the Flying this up. We're doing Lord of the Flies right now, where like there's going to be anarchy and people are going to try to take control. And reasonably, if there's not one voice to this society, someone's going to have to chime in and say, oh no, well, I'm going to be in control right now. Like, if anything, nobody better F with me and this and that. Like, immediately when I saw this whole, like, when I saw this part coming where I'm like, okay, so this is kind of like Lord of the Flies. I'm like, shoot, man, if there's a grocery store in this place, I would be looting like crazy. Like, man, I would know that everybody and their brother would be stealing all the food. So immediately I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm gonna go grocery shopping for free. And immediately that's what popped in my head. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go looting. See you later. And then everybody thought about that like days later. I'm like, God, you people are stupid. Because then, like, days later, they all went grocery shopping and everybody's grabbing stuff up. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go through every aisle and just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna dump all this stuff. I'm gonna dump all this stuff in my cart. All of this stuff, this entire aisle, I'm just gonna grab this entire aisle and just, like, have a tractor pull and just, like, take an entire, like, aisle of food with me. And then just like, okay, well, this is all I'm gonna get. See you later. It's not gonna be like the candy aisle, no. Like, if anything, it's gonna be like the microwavable stuff because well, even that, it would probably have to be like canned goods because more than likely that's probably the easiest quasi thing to not only like keep, because like when looking at it, The Walking Dead canned goods, so it would probably have to be canned goods. So I'm already planning this thing out. I'm already tracking and thinking. But yeah, so canned goods. When crap goes down, get a can of something, as long as it's not dog food. Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. Like the longer that we're going about this, and the longer they're assessing, it's like, oh well, we're probably gonna lose electricity at some point. We're gonna start losing resources. We're gonna start losing food, and then I'm like, oh my god, wow, this is actually smarter than I thought it was gonna be. Like I thought it was just gonna be kids and their teen angst, and they're like, oh no, what are we gonna do without our mom and pa, and what happens if I ever love somebody and get a little prego? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Well, you're probably gonna have to keep the kid. But anyways, so but there's also a mystery in the show as well. So like I could probably joke about this and make fun of it, but I thought that there's little slivers of interesting parts. There's little like fascinating points in the show, even though like I wouldn't like begrudgingly I wouldn't like man, this show is fascinating. Oh my god, like I've seen shows like this, and I've seen like stuff that is quasi familiar to me, and that stuff had much more of a uh like that had much more of a like a build up or like a suspense element, where this one doesn't have as much suspense into it, which ultimately I think that's my main drawback, is it doesn't have enough like, oh my god, like what is gonna happen. Like no, it's just kind of like, well no, you're just gonna have to be farmers now. And no, you're just gonna have to like you're just gonna have to eat less. You're just gonna have to like try to figure out how to uh, make a community that's gonna have to do chores and this and that. So, anyways, let's get into spoilers about these 4 episodes. Let's taper out to otherwise, without a doubt, talk about this show. So, spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this show. So, in these first 4 episodes, I've kind of broke it down a little bit about what is kind of going on within the show. So if anything, like going further on into this. So, like I said, this town evidently that they are in is really smelly. Somebody farted really bad in the show, and they don't know what the smell is coming from. They can't track it down. They can't figure out where the smell is coming from. They just think it's just a really smelly town. And so they have to leave, the kids have to all leave this smelly town while all the parents are just like, bye. Every single one of the parents are all waving in that same queen-like way. Every single person is all waving the exact same way in this town. And I'm like, why is everyone waving the same way? Why is everybody waving the exact that was so off-putting to me. But anyways, we have these people all go into this bus and they all go into the bus and I was like, okay, this is like the fifth wave all over again because I just saw other kids all go into this bus and like I'm so like this feels like fifth wave all over again. Like what's gonna happen? Is the tidal wave gonna kill all these people? What's going on? So we have it to where these kids are going on this bus and it seems like they've been on this bus for like days. It seems like the kids are like all falling asleep on the bus. They're like, man, this bus ride, 5 stars. Man, if this guy was an Uber, right, he would make a killing right now. But so funny enough, the bus just keeps going, and then evidently the bus couldn't figure out how to get out of town. So ultimately, the bus drivers go exactly back to where all the kids were dropped off. Here is my problem. Where are the bus drivers? What happened to all the bus drivers after they dropped all the kids off? I'm so confused. What happened to the buses and or bus drivers? Because I'm sure those were probably adults in this town. Did they vanish as well? I'm confused. So we eventually have it to where these kids are all like, hey, well, I guess we're all back at the place that we that we were left off of. Well, I guess I have to call my parents and let them know that the bizarrely the bus driver couldn't get me out of town. So we have it to where the kids are calling their mom and their dad, and bizarrely no one is answering. And the kids are just like, okay, well, maybe everyone's asleep. If anything, weirdly and bizarrely, that smell is gone. Maybe somebody finally put some potpourri around. I don't know. But weirdly and bizarrely, that smell is no longer a part of this town. So we we have these kids that for some bizarre reason cannot get a hold of their parents. Every single time it either rings or so these people all start scrolling or start rolling throughout the town, just like, yeah, let's kind of mosey on over to see what's all going on in the town. I probably will actually get to actors' names at some point, but nah, probably right now I'll probably just call the kids, or quasi kids, because I think they're at a teenage point. The teenagers, I guess I could call them. So these teenagers all kind of stroll throughout the town. They realize the smell is gone because somebody stopped farting. And so, really, it gets to the point to where one of the kids, or the kids who ultimately saw the previous lettering that was on that wall, is now gone. The weird like seance like thing that I'm assuming must have been some kind of black magic like deal that somebody bizarrely performed. So I'm like, wait a minute. So is this gonna be like one of those where I saw a Young Justice episode of this where somebody performed black magic and then created a town where there was only adults and only kids, and then Shazam, when Shazam would say the word Shazam and then turn in either to a kid or a adult, he could kind of float between two worlds. So I wonder if that's like, well, they won't have a Shazam person, but they won't have a Shazam guy, but justifiably I'm wondering if like two people are existing in the same place, and what is probably going to happen in the second season is kind of like the Nicole Kidman movie, The Others, where maybe we're going to have the adults noticing that a lot of like groceries are gone, or that food is being made, or this and that, and they're just kind of like, oh, well, our kids must be doing this. Maybe, I don't know. But anyways, so we have it to where it seems that the girl who is kind of the head school girl, the head like the girl that they elect as like school representative, evidently she is going to really end up just being a the leader of this society. But at first, it doesn't really seem like anyone is kind of taking control or anyone's taking the lead. We ultimately find out that that Cassandra, who ultimately could quite possibly be the leader of everyone, uh, it seems that she has a pacemaker. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, that's pretty crazy to quite possibly need a heart doctor, and where are you going to have it? Like, so recently you have a lack of specialists because there's not much of anybody that is much of a doctor to figure out how to, because all these people are teenagers. We really forcibly have seemingly uh, Gordy, who is going to be forced to try to be almost the doctor of this town, and so recently he ends up um, trying to check up on Cassandra, and it seems like Cassandra and Gordy are quite quickly and easily having a relationship brewing, just because like, well, hey, if you're gonna date anybody, it's probably the guy that's probably gonna be the possible doctor, and why not? So in the early parts of the show, we have some people that are kind of writing right away, trying to establish their dominance in the city, or dominance in this town of sorts. You have certain people that know where they can find a gun, so ultimately they pull it out onto everyone, and they basically establish that it's like, well, hey, like if anything, like people don't get in my way, and no one will get hurt, and ba 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 ba. So within the show, that's the problem with not having a good cast of everyone, and plus there's a lot of freaking there's a big cast in the show. Uh, Full series cast. Okay, I want to say Will Leclerc is the guy who otherwise. Oh no, 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 no. Campbell. Campbell. He is the guy that otherwise pulls a gun on the very first episode and is now like early on telling people kind of what to do, or it seems at a lot of points in this show people are choosing sides. It seems we have some people that think that they can buy their way through this society, which I think is stupid. We have Harry, I believe his name is Harry. He ultimately has gold on him, and I'm like, what good is gold gonna do? And so, also, does someone ask that question as well? It's like, dude, like, gold means nothing. You can't eat it. You can't drink it. You can't like. What is gold gonna do? Uh, Recently, at some points, we have people bargaining to, because ultimately some people are rich, and so in this society, in this town, so they think that they can bargain with cars and stuff like that. Dude, anyone could steal any of this stuff and take it from you, So there is no real bargain to be had. Reasonably, it's just everyone just has to live together copacetically, and within these first four episodes, stuff eventually escalates because it has to. So in these first early episodes, we find out that there are some characters that are ultimately like this is probably the worst time for them to be teleported within their own world because we have a character like Becca who ultimately we find is pregnant. Ultimately, she had to take a pregnancy test and she found out that she was pregnant. She's like, "Oh my god, like what if I don't want this child? And plus two, how are we going to be able to take care of this child?" And yeah, cuz they eventually through these four episodes they're starting to realize that they are going to eventually run out of electricity. It seems like electricity isn't eventually always going to be in this town, and so eventually they're going to have to figure out how to uh, like uh, like make a conductor or some kind of thing of sorts that'll make them have or solar power somehow. They're going to have to figure out how to try to have an energy source that keeps their electricity alive, which I don't know how they're going to do that. But I liked in the very beginning of these episodes where you ultimately had people driving off in their cars to see how far out of town they can go, and every single time there is a blockage of woods. And I thought it was fascinating when even when people would start to go further on into the woods, that all of a sudden we had people getting bitten by poisonous snakes and killed. And I'm like, so yeah. So in other words, we're probably never going to be able to have them go further on into the woods because every time there's going to be a an animal or something of equal strength or just equal just they're not going to be able to keep walking into the woods. Immediately, the first thing that popped into my mind was like, dude, just go and walk in the woods, you stupid schmucks. But then ultimately, when they walk in the woods further, of course, like the girl gets like nabbed and bitten by the snake. I'm like, oh, so we're doing this now. We're even if people were to try to get further on into the woods, they would get killed by something to stall them from getting further on into the woods. So they cannot leave this place even if they tried. So justifiably, they have to come up with resources or an everlasting resource to be able to keep electricity alive, uh, keep a food source and drinking source from consistently flowing. So, man, if there was a person that was smart enough and had like survival training and whatever that could construct uh, like all these kinds of like resources and stuff like that, that would have been perfect for this show. But sadly, no one was smart enough, and this and that, and there wasn't like a real true like genius in this town that was like a Sheldon or like a just a brilliant Ash like person. But you would have thought that there should have been. But anyways, so I was I was fascinated by the simple notions of just like, well, like here's the next thing that they should probably do, and then once they do that, that blows up in their face. I'm like, okay, so now there's definitely no way out. If anything, if they were probably to even go further on into the woods, it would just push them more back into the town. I get it. I got it. Like there's no way out. It's just them just having to work this out and try to figure out how to uh, live in this new environment. So it's kind of like the show Glitch all over again. Because I ultimately saw the show Glitch where you had the people that came back from life or came back to life from out of their own graves, and but then they couldn't leave the town or otherwise it would turn into ash. So it's kind of like that show too. So going further on into this show, we have seemingly them wanting to come up with some kind of chore system because we have consistent garbage bags that are piling up, and so of course that is making their town smelly again. So really, we have to have people start doing chores within the town. You have people that all have to go into the cafeteria to bake all kinds of food. You have to feed everyone in the town. You have certain grocery stores that are kind of locked up, or ultimately you have guards that are kind of preventing anyone from just coming in and taking everything, and or not taking their equal amount of food and or stuff. We eventually have to where seemingly at first we have a society that, like, we have a number of people that are kind of all having a they even have like a town's meeting, because it seems like they, in the early episodes, they end up going into the church and just breaking out and just having a party, which I'm like, okay, like, I guess that would definitely be the one thing that you could really do, to just be like, well, f all this, like, I'm just gonna have fun. I'm just gonna drink and pour beers all over this church, and I don't care. It's like what a like it's not like we're gonna get caught, so it's like, meh, like we can just throw caution to the wind, uh because there is no law there. There was no law. That's why it was like, F it, loot everything, like get out, like get a 60-inch TV that you can't even watch any TV on. Go and get as much food as humanly possible, because who knows how quickly everyone is going to just grab everything up. So I would have done that right away. I was like, hey, no food? Or I would have said, like, F it, I'm going to go get some food. Get whatever I want. I'll figure, like, you're going to have to eventually figure out how to make stuff anyways. You're going to have to, like, figure out how to cook things, even though, and hilariously in one episode, one guy evidently tried to barbecue in his own home and burnt down his own home because he was stupid. I wonder if they have like firefighters or policemen, or they don't have policemen, but like, what happens if somebody burns down their home? What are they going to do? Just let it burn, I guess, until eventually you're just like, nah, it sucks to be him. So going along here, nobody thinks of food. Everybody thinks that, like, episodes down the road. But anyways, so we eventually have them have chores, and that's when eventually they all think, well, I guess I should go and eat some stuff, right? And so recently you just see like a bunch of people that are all like crazily looting this grocery store, and everybody's like, why is everybody crazily getting food? It's like, really? Like, there's some people that want to board themselves up in their own home because it's like, well, F it, you know what? I have food, so like I don't care. Like, I'll just stay in my home and just eat food all day. I don't care. Like, that's just what I'll do. Uh, but instead, within these 4 episodes, they also play these like random games where they have it to be. Uh, we have 2 teams. One team all drives around in their cars, and they are the police. And you have a bunch of people all running around, and they're fugitives. I thought this game was like, okay, like this is actually a cool idea or a cool concept, and it's also like, I'm sure that's an easy way to start brewing some relationships that haven't been uh, that haven't been set yet. Ultimately, we have Sam Elliott or Sam, uh, I believe that's how to pronounce that name, who ultimately is a character who is actually deaf. And I'm like, well, I like that they're they kind of have like a they don't have a like a range of they have like they don't have like a real range of like a bunch of different kinds of people. They just kind of have a like it's not like they have a blind person and but like they just have a deaf person, and I guess that's just interesting enough. Like they have to learn sign language, or you have a bunch of people that already know sign language, but some people are willing to learn sign language within the show, which I thought that was great. I thought that was fun to like bring in a person, and ultimately you have a bunch of actors that probably did have to learn sign language, or maybe luckily already learned it, or already knew how to sign. So yeah, that's definitely one thing. Like, what if a person only spoke a certain language and nobody in this town knew how to speak that language? Man, is that guy effed? They didn't have that in this show. Isn't that kind of stupid? Isn't that a little like that's kind of a little BS, isn't it? Like you should have a person that can't speak English and then somebody has to learn that language. It's just like yeah, wouldn't that be should have been part of the show. But anyways, so we have some people in this show that ultimately we have Cassidy who or Cassandra who ends up being the leader of all this, and she's telling them exactly what they're gonna do. Uh, at some point, we have guns that are invited into the show, and it seems like we also start to have a rebellion that is kind of wavingly floating around, where we're just start having people like doing things for themselves. We also have the death of Cassandra, which we have to figure out who had killed her. It's the whole who killed JR scenario from Dynasty. It's the same thing here. And it's not like they can trace the bullets. It's not like they can. It's not like they have any CSI characters that are here. But we also have to have we have Jordy uh, who has to like who has to take out the bullets of out of this girl's body. I'm like, why? Like she's already dead. Because that's what I was like. Why is he taking the bullets out of this person's body? What difference does that make? But I guess it's like, well, I guess I have to if I have to try to take bullets out, I guess it's better of a cadaver than an actual person. So I guess if anything, and plus I guess he wanted to preserve the body because ultimately that was a girl that he seemed to be close to falling in love with. So we have it to where there seems to quite possibly be some some culprits that could easily be the murderer or the murderee. Uh, Allie ultimately got snubbed by Cassandra for seemingly being a leader-ish person of this town. Ultimately, Allie being Cassandra's sister, Allie was just kind of like, dude, I'm kind of left out. Like, why didn't you make me a leader of this town? And Cassandra was just like, well, I think it was just kind of like she would have shown favoritism if ultimately Allie was a leader of this town, but reasonably or kind of one of the chosen people. But it seems like Allie is stepping in to ultimately be the leader of this town, anyways, which again could give her a boatload of motive. But I think there's also a lot of people that could have a lot of motives. There could be some people that want to uh, be a shoulder to cry on for some people, or it honestly could have just been that it's like, well, I wanted to be the leader, and I'm ticked off that I'm not the leader, so I'm going to kill the leader who is the leader, and so on and so forth. Right after Cassandra dies, it seems like everybody comes out of the woodwork with bullets or with guns, to the point to where a gun falls out of somebody's pocket and goes off, and then there's like two or three guns all popping into this cafeteria, all like having a standoff, and then one person pulls a fire alarm and everybody scrambles. There's a thing, like, what's gonna happen if the fire alarm goes off and nobody's gonna be in the building? Like, I guess, how are they gonna figure out how to turn that fire alarm off? If anyway, so going into this show, we eventually have Allie, who becomes the leader of everybody. It seems like we have a bunch of guys that are coming to her home and trying to console her about her sister's death. Uh, Ultimately, we have one character who gives her tea and then gives her a, uh, a a scripture to read, and so going into this show, it seems like they of course, when there isn't a leader present, it seems like everything goes to crap, everything goes into anarchy. And so they consistently need a leader to tell them what to do, or otherwise everybody's going to go out and do anything for themselves. You have one girl that is hiding in her own home with a bat and just not talking to anyone. We have some people that are stealing food now, and ultimately there's some people that are not going and doing their cafeteria jobs or any of their chores, because why would they? Why would they be taking care of others when instead they should be trying to take care of themselves? Because reasonably, when looking at it, somebody in that same cafeteria was going to put a bullet in someone. We also have a prom that goes on within this tail end of this fourth episode, getting to the kind of conclusion of we have some people revealing that they're pregnant, or it seems like we have really relationships that are really brewing. Ultimately, with Campbell and we have Campbell, who ultimately is within a relationship with, let's see here, Ellie. Ellie, there we go. That's the problem with 85 different people in one show. Ellie, who seems to be like kind of a person that is kind of hidden in the background, all of a sudden in one episode shows up, and then more and more it seems like she's becoming more and more prominent on on these episodes. I don't know what it is. It seems like the longer that we go on with this episode, more people are all of a sudden just going to be like, oh, well, hey, the person that you never really saw me before, all of a sudden you'll see me now, because they're going to continue casting women or guys and to be on this show that we didn't even know that they were on until, like, oh, okay, well, now this person is all of a sudden important because we casted them now as so and so person for so and so relationship. That's the thing. Like, you have like I think early on in the show you have a certain set piece of characters and then just a ton of extras. But I think the longer that this show goes on, they casted more. They casted more people. So that's when you, like, all of a sudden you see a girl that you never saw before that all of a sudden has a role, and they're pushed to be more prominent now, because that's the thing. Uh, any number of people can all of a sudden or could become important, because you don't know how many people were actually off of those buses. So probably by the end of the show, you're going to find out there's like 300 like kids that are all in this town that all have specific roles. And that's the thing. I don't think that there were that many kids. And all of a sudden you're just going to discover all these people have certain gimmicks or certain resources that it's like, well, hey, why wasn't that person coming into the fold since day one? Why didn't they mention that they were able to figure this out since day one? Why isn't that some of these people mentioned that they had a gun until 4 episodes deep? Because we ultimately have Luke, who seems to be in a relationship with Helena, and she mentions that, oh yeah, like, my dad has all these guns laying around. How about you? Like, how about you hold a gun? Like, I'll hold a gun too. We'll hold a gun together, like, and maybe Luke will eventually maybe be the sheriff of this town, which I would assume Luke is eventually going to be at some point, because it seems like he is the when they had a search party, it seemed like he was the one who was like, yeah, let's go and do a search party. I think Luke is eventually going to have to be the sheriff of this town, or going to have to be the morality police or the martial law for this town. Is what I ultimately would think that he would eventually be. So yeah, and we had the whole prom where ultimately everybody was getting busy with everybody. Because if there was kind of some fledgling, like, I thought it was kind of weird that all of a sudden we just established all these relationships just then and now. Because I guess every single person in this show was single up until, like, hey, the world's gonna end, so F it, let's all get together. Let's all of a sudden now have relationships. Now, like, it seems that there were some relationships that were just kind of hidden the whole entire time. Uh, like, Abby did seemingly have a relationship with, or Allie had a relationship with. We're trying to. Mikey? No, might have been Mikey. There's so many people. There's so many gosh darn people in this cast. Uh, yeah, Mikey. I want to say Mikey. I could be wrong about that. But anyways, so yeah, there's there's a lot of love triangles going on. It seems like there is a lot of interesting relationships, but there's also, I think the biggest problem is you can't even remember who any of these people are. Like, there's too many people in this freaking cast already that, like, everyone kind of all looks the same at some points, or like there's like 30 different blondes in the show, and then you probably have like you have like 10 different brunettes, and you have like nobody really sticks out 100% in this show. Unless they have done an acting gig somewhere before, and then you could be like, oh yeah, that's that person. But reasonably, barely any of these people really stand out. Everyone all looks the same, like they do. But anyways, so going on into this show, the frustrating part is ultimately just going, okay, where is this show actually heading? Is it just going to be this consistent back and forth of this anarchy that's otherwise going to rise consistently, where this town is eventually just going to go to crap at some points, and they're just going to have to re put things together once the electricity falls? Is that going to make anarchy happen again? Like, is that just going to consistently be the thing? Is just every time something falls apart, or they lose food, or there's some resource that falls, or something, or someone gets killed yet again, and there's a serial killer going around. Like, so I guess that's just going to be the drama, or the otherwise build. But I also I like the relationship with Elle and Campbell, how they were just kind of really pushing one another, and how Campbell was just going he wanted Ellie, and like recently just doing that little game where it was like the fugitive and the police officer, where he nabbed her, and then ultimately he was just kind of pushing her like basically into the bedroom, and like pushing her to just be with him. And I guess she was like, well, like might as well, like there's only so few options in this town. And recently, like this relationship just bizarrely just worked, because he just pushed her and it worked. And but then eventually I'm seeing that this relationship is eventually going to probably at some point be a train wreck, because I think that there is going to be at some point like a lot of relationships that are just going to end up being like a train wreck, where like at first like people are just going to easily go with things because it's easy, but then they're going to realize like maybe there's something more to this person that I didn't realize at first, and now I'm in too deep, and this is just going to blow up in my face at some point, is what I'm assuming is going to happen with the society. So I don't know. There was some interesting things going on here. Some love triangles. Uh, there were some fascinating approaches to this show, but if anything, I was just like I was like quasi like I was interested in it. I was watching the whole way through, but I also felt like there was a lot of need to watch the whole thing, because there wasn't enough going on in every single episode that I desperately needed to watch like every single minute of it. And I think that is the biggest problem of the show. Is it just like, well, it's like if you miss like 20 to 30 minutes of the show, who cares? Because it's still not going to be as eventful all the way through, to just be like, oh, well, that's just what happened in the last 20 to 30 minutes. Oh, okay, well, like, all right. Like, it's kind of a show that you can probably watch as background noise, which is completely fine. Because ultimately, it is starting to get like a mystery going on of who killed Cassandra. And it seems like there's too many people with motives, and you probably want to go with the most inconvenient answer, or you want to try to figure out who is the person least likely to kill this person, and that is probably it. Uh, but yeah, so looking at it, I have no real. I don't want to really have a real conclusion of who could be the murderer, because more than likely, I think I will be wrong either way. Uh, there could have been like Cassandra, the girl that she ended up taking a picture with at the prom, could ultimately have been the culprit. We could have ultimately had Allie's questionable on again, off again boyfriend that's seemingly having a love triangle brewing with I think it's Mikey, with either Allie, or ultimately the girl that he went to count all the food with the grocery store. Because ultimately they did a head count of every single portion of food that was in the grocery store, and like there was a girl that was a brunette that heaven forbid try to figure out all these names in the show. Um, but yeah, so we we ultimately, I think it's Kelly. Yeah, Kelly. Anyways, so yeah, Kelly. Kelly could have been the girl that ultimately went to go and get head counts on grocery store on the grocery store. So yeah, it's could be Kelly, could be any person that is seemingly having some kind of love triangle, or any, like, even Allie could ultimately have wanted to kill Cassandra so that way she eventually could be a leader of this town. Gordy could have killed her because ultimately he didn't want to become the doctor of this town. Anybody could have killed Cassandra. Anybody. Campbell could have killed her because he wanted to be quasi leader of this town, and I don't know. It could be anybody. It could even be anybody that you don't even barely know. It could have been Sam. Sam could have killed her. I don't know. It could have, like, they're not going to be Sherlock Holmes in this, or Jacques Cousteauing it, or whatever. No one seemingly is putting a real true case together, but I'm assuming within the last 6 episodes of this, that's probably all they're gonna do. And to the very last episode, it's probably gonna be, oh, who is the killer? It's this person. Oh my god, how could it have been that person the entire time? Because that's the only thing that they have going for them, is this mystery case. Because everything else is just like, okay, well, uh, are people gonna have a party? Are people gonna have are people gonna do a prom or some kind of bizarre event that and there's a thing, whenever they're having these parties and having these get-togethers, they are blowing away a lot of resources to do these things. They're blowing a lot of electricity, they're blowing a lot of uh, like food and drinks on these things. So recently, I just can't justify why do these parties. It seems like when you do a party, you're blowing excess of food that you don't have, and like how much alcohol do they blow throughout most of these parties, and like that's the thing. So it seems like we have some romances a brewing, and I think I can like the show for that. I kind of don't like the will they won't they thing. It seems like there's some people playing the field, and I hate that. Because recently it's like, dude, how many options do you really have? How many, like, you're just gonna be playing the field anyways, even though it's like, dude, it's not like you can go to another town and find some other woman there. But I think there's some people that think that they can probably eventually escape this, and I thought that it was bizarre that there were some people that were planning on, like, yeah, we're gonna investigate how we can get out of here, and I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. Dude, this is like the Bermuda Triangle, which I don't think you're ever gonna get out of. So more than likely, they're probably gonna have to like be in this seemingly thing for years. Like, I don't think there's gonna be an easy way out of things. I thought it was interesting that it seems that Sam had come up with a conclusion that there was a $1.5 million uh, kind of reason why quite possibly the kids could have been gone, and Sam and Campbell were looking at this paperwork, and ultimately Campbell told Sam to tear it up because it's just like, well, like, dude, like, we don't want this town to think that our father had uh, put us here. Like, gives our father motive to create this, to have created this world, or this wormhole, or whatever the heck that we're in, or whatever. And ultimately, people are saying parallel worlds and all this other stuff. They ultimately had it to where some kids were finding out that their parents were having an affairs or cheating on them, which I thought was interesting. But when looking at it, you could have maybe had flashbacks of stuff that ultimately could have brought back the parents to actually be a part of this town. But I guess it's just like, no, we're just gonna have the kids, and that's all it's gonna, like, we're not gonna do flashbacks, which I honestly think they should have done, but meh, I guess they're not. Maybe they will, like, towards the end of this. Maybe the very last episode will be like a flashback episode that finally, like, connects everything, and that'll be it. I don't know. But I think I'm going to go here. I thought that this show was... There's some interesting things about it, but there's not enough... The big problem is just suspense. It's not suspenseful enough. Even the 100, with kind of how that show was kind of a slow trickle, like, for that, it felt like there were some, like, questionable moments of just like, oh, we're not sure if these kids are even going to live in this environment. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it. And so eventually they do. And so, yeah, it's like, I think that's as intriguing enough for the 100. But I don't know. I didn't watch all the way through the 100 because I thought it kind of got boring after a certain point. Like, I remember watching, like, the pilot episode, and then I kind of watched, like, I think quite a bit of episodes of it. But, like, to me, everything just started to be like, oh, okay, well, these bad people of this island that we're in, that we found that there were some cavemen-ish like people, we gotta go kill them because we gotta make sure that we're gonna survive in this town. Or some people would start to, like, separate and just become anarchists of this town. And that was the horrible thing about 100. But I think society is gonna end the same way. It's just gonna... People are going to start choosing sides, and it's just going to boil down to the investigation thing will be for the next 6 episodes. Because I think they'll probably completely forget about it for probably an episode or two. And then I'm like, oh no, now we really need to figure out who killed this person, or someone else is going to die by gunshots. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we need to figure out who this is. And it's probably going to be the worst possible person. They'd be like, oh no, it's not that person. And then that's how the show is just going to end. So I'm going to end this review. I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.